from yourself now. Get it what you're told. Never let your guard down. Anywhere you go. In the right place, at the right time, and still you sinking to the floor.
A liner, and the Orioles are the world champions.
In the right place, at the right time, and still you sinking to the floor. Never enough.
Heard that one one time. On the run, forget.
Never enough. Never enough. It's never enough. No. Never enough. Never enough. It's never enough. No.
Wow, if that doesn't make you cry and excited, goosebumps, and all the above, then check your pulse.
In a replacing series first, the cornerstone in question was still active while being replaced, but didn't move positions due to some cataclysmic injury or completely replaced due to an unforeseen circumstance. It was simply because he was getting old. Shortstop is a young man's position, Yankees, and Ripken was already in year 5 of having gray in his hair. It was time to move him over to third, and both parties knew it. It feels strange not using this section to discuss a debilitating back condition or the long-term effects of CTE. Only that getting old sucks, and you should put off doing it for as long as you can. The only note that I want to leave here in the intro is how difficult the shortstop position is for a team to fill. Just keep that in mind throughout this video. So, little known fact about me. I used to be a cybersecurity/privacy consultant before I started doing this full time. I saw firsthand just how much of our personally identifiable information, aka PII, is just floating around online. Unfortunately, it's just become a fact of life that our personal data is being bought and sold by data brokers. But I believe it's time to take our data back. And that's why I trust Dayschemin, the sponsor of today's video. Dayschemin is a hands-free subscription service that will remove your personal information that's being sold online. The process is super easy. Once you answer a few questions, Dayschemin will send you a personalized privacy report and remove your data from hundreds of data broker websites. If you're a privacy nerd like me, you understand how valuable the service Dayschemin provides is. But you don't have to be one to use it. It's super simple, effective, and transparent, which is important to me. I got my privacy report back within a week of answering their questionnaire, and they were able to remove 54 listings of my PII from 50 different data brokers, which saved me over 10 hours of time. If you go to joindaletememe.com/NMF or click the link in the description and use promo code NMF. You will get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans. That's joindeleteme.com/NMF and promo code NMF. Thank you again to Delete Me for sponsoring this video. Replacing a franchise legend with your predecessor, not even a stone's throw away from you on the diamond, is a Herculean task that could potentially break someone's will. The Orioles initially experimented with moving Cal Ripken to third during the 1996 season. So that begs the question, how do you replace someone who is literally irreplaceable for over a decade? Well, you bring in 25-year-old Manny Alexander. He would be the first man not named Cal to start a game at that position in Baltimore since Len Sakata in 1982. Many in Orioles camp pegged him as Ripken's heir as far back as 1992. His offensive profile left a lot on the table, but the hope was it would be competent enough in order to put a potential Gold Glove caliber player at short once Cal was unable to man the position. I'm going to stop here. You don't know who Manny Alexander is. He's a blurb in a 1,000-page book, a cough during a hurricane. How bad do you think his time could have gone to warrant his immediate irrelevance in this story? Holy shnikes! Only 4 players with a similar amount of plate appearances put up worse offensive numbers than Alexander that year, and they were all pitchers. Manny Alexander was clearly overmatched, but the Orioles, despite being in a playoff race, kept trotting him on the field in various capacities. That's how badly they wanted Alexander to take over at short, but it only took 70 plate appearances to know that not only was he a long way away from being Ripken's replacement, he was a long way away from becoming a viable bench warmer. Even with internal options limited, that offseason, Ripken and the Orioles agreed that he would make the permanent move to third base. Cal wasn't necessarily torn about it. In fact, he came up as a third baseman when scouts were skeptical about the 6'4" behemoth manning a position that literally had the word short in its title. The question was, who was strong-willed enough to broach the impossible task of replacing your future teammate?
Today. This will be on the ground and a double play.
Here's the 2-2, and Bordick reaches out, punches it to left field. That's a base hit. Here comes Andretti to tie, and they will hold Gates at third base.
Mike Bordick was never one to back down. Despite the fact that he led his University of Maine Black Bears to 2 of their program's 7 total College World Series appearances, he went undrafted after graduation. Bordick opted to play in the Cape Cod League along with future middle infield legend Craig Biggio, and after grinding through the circuit over a long summer, Bordick was approached by an A scout. Shortly after, he signed a minor league deal with them. He was just 25 games into his major league career when the Athletics called him up to fill in for the injured Walt Weiss during the 1990 World Series. During his time with Oakland, he became what the Orioles were hoping Alexander would evolve into, an elite defensive shortstop whose offense doesn't offend you enough to risk losing the glove over. Bordick got a taste of success early on and was hungry to join another contender, and so he was ecstatic when he got the call from the Orioles front office after becoming a free agent in 1996. Only problem, he didn't want to be a homewrecker. Nobody does. But the Orioles insisted that if it wasn't Bordick, it would have been someone else.
He said, listen, this is a situation where it's going to happen probably with or without you. We think that you are the right guy to come in and fill his shoes. And, after, some soul searching and the Baltimore Orioles just went to the postseason in 96. They were, in my mind, they looked like the team that was going to be the next dynasty. I needed that feel of we're playing for a ring today,
The Iron Man himself reached out to Bordick in order to ease any anxieties Mike had about the decision. And so in December of 96, Bordick signed a 3-year deal with a vesting option to be the Orioles' first official stop to replacing Ripken. Despite the expected mediocre results at the plate, Bordick's defense shored up a pitching staff that saw an 11 reference WAR improvement off the back of a 21-point BABIP improvement from the previous year. I'm not saying that all of this rested on Bordick's shoulders, but the ability to move Ripken, a still capable fielder with a cannon of an arm in limited range, to third and replace him with a defensive wizard at short was without a doubt a key to the Orioles going from an overachieving good team to an overachieving great team. I mean, this was the only roster that was able to push the mighty Yankees away from a division title, stopping what could have been a streak of 11 straight right in its tracks. Unfortunately, despite putting up a good fight, the Orioles fell victim to the Cuyahoga Capers in the ALCS. While his offense was predictably underwhelming, Bordick put on a clinic at short, including turning a sick double play in the 8th inning of Game 1, which he essentially called off the second baseman while receiving pitcher Scott Erickson's throw before throwing a bullet to first in order to complete the transaction. Was all this necessary? Considering the hitter was Indians catcher Sandy Alomar, no, but it looks sick. Bordick continued his run as one of the game's best defensive shortstops throughout his time in the orange and black. He added some pop to his bat in '98 when it seemed like a lot of guys inextricably were. This is not in any way accusing Bordick of anything, but facts are facts. Cause then he doubled his homer total from '99 to 2000 on his way to his first and only All-Star appearance. Interestingly, his defensive numbers sagged to career lows in 2000, but those numbers contain a ton of noise and reputation was law back then. Everybody in the industry lauded Bordick as one of the best to do it. Bordick's defensive numbers weren't the only ones sagging. The Orioles' run as the powerhouse of the AL East had ended abruptly, and by the turn of the century, it was clear the team needed to make a decision about the future. There was a lot of uncertainty surrounding the Orioles at this time. Eventually despised owner Peter Angelos was a relative newcomer. The first GM he brought in, Frank Wren, was fired less than a year after taking over because he ordered the team jet to take off without Cal Ripken Jr., a very normal occurrence for a serious franchise. Fans legitimately didn't know what direction this team would take, but they made the decision to unload talent on expiring contracts at the 2000 trade deadline. This meant Mike Bordick, who was on the final year of his deal, would be a part of the departure committee. One of the returns was an infielder named Melvin Mora. If there is one thing we can reliably pencil baseball in for, it's to produce a litany of feel-good stories about guys overcoming extreme odds on their way to donning a major league uniform. Hell, the first guy we covered was undrafted out of college. Melvin Mora's life was built on the idea of survival. When he was 6 years old, he was walking with his dad in front of his own house in his native Venezuela when a gunman stepped out in front of them and pulled the trigger on his dad's chest. It was an organized killing. Only problem was the gunman had the wrong address. His dad passed away in their living room a few minutes later. To cope with the trauma, Mora turned towards athletics. He was a fantastic boxer and even made the Venezuelan national soccer team as a teenager. But it was baseball which would be Mora's ticket out. After being a relatively late international signing by the Astros in 1990, an effect of him turning towards the sport later than most, he spent 7 years wallowing in their minor league system as a super utility player. Finally, in 1998, the Astros cut ties with Mora. His odds of ever stepping foot onto a major league field was closer to 0 than it was to 1. So a couple of options were presented to him. A, he could retire. B, he could play for an American independent league, such as the recently adopted Atlantic League. C, he could play in Mexico, closer to his home in Venezuela. Or D, he could sign with the Mercury Tigers in the Chinese Professional Baseball League. You heard that right. Melvin Mora opted to go across the Pacific, not to play for the NPBL or the KBO, but the Chinese Professional Baseball League, whose alumni include former major leaguers Yu Chang and Zhu Wei Lin. Do you remember those names? I do, because I know ball, but let's just say this wasn't necessarily an ends to a mean, but the means to an end. The Mets, who were in need of another versatile Venezuelan, sent a scout to China, and they liked what they saw. In 1999, at the age of 27, Melvin Mora debuted for the New York Mets. Now I'm going to cut this short because most of us don't remember Melvin Mora as the Orioles shortstop. He didn't spend a lot of time there because obviously he was better suited as a super utility player, eventually settling in at third base, and for a brief flash was among the best third basemen in the sport. Seriously, you want to have some fun? Look up Melvin Mora's 2004. Put a pin in that season. It'll be relevant later. I really shouldn't have devoted this much time to his story, but it's one that I would be remiss had it flown under the radar of this video. He ended up becoming the most consequential return for a third of a Mike Bordick season, and not only did he do a fine job plugging the gap at short despite having less than 500 innings there at a professional level, he ended up being one of the team's most valuable and beloved players going into the 2000s. Not bad for someone whose options were once relegated to the third most difficult baseball league across the Pacific. And possibly one of the most egregious examples of having your cake and eating it too, the Orioles brought Mike Bordick back following the conclusion of the 2000 season. Very suspiciously similar to the Yankees bringing Aroldis Chapman back in 2017 after trading him for Gleyber Torres in 2016. His second stint with the team was by far the less memorable and less productive. Ironically, he was now the same age as Cal Ripken when the Orioles decided his time at shortstop was up. Nowadays, Bordick is a key member of the Baltimore community. He considers his time in Charm City as the highlight of his career, and many of you watching probably remember him for being a part-time color analyst on MASN during the 2010s. Not many people can say they were the first in line to replace a franchise legend, and felt comfortable enough not only showing their face at alumni events, but feeling embraced by the city enough to become a fixture of it. I'm looking at you, Didi Gregorius and Chris Johnson, you cowards. I'm just kidding. I love you guys. 2001 marked the final season of Ripken Jr.'s career. During that year's All-Star game, he got one last opportunity to man the sixth thanks to our sweet, sweet angel, which apparently Ripken wasn't too fond of. Classic. October 6th, 2001 would be Cal Ripken Jr.'s 3,000th and first game, a record for shortstops, and the final game in his illustrious career. As we've seen with the series, it's not often we experience a storybook ending, even when the stars aligned for 75% of it. Ripken's career was built by defying the notion that tall guys couldn't play shortstop. He responded to that notion by setting the record for most consecutive games played, accomplishing most of it while being a 6'4" shortstop. With his retirement, not only are the Orioles still tasked with replacing his former position, they need to find a new face of the franchise. Someone who would define the 2000s for them the same way Ripken defined the 80s and 90s. It was up to first-time co-GM Mike Flanagan, former Orioles Cy Young winner, color commentator, pitching coach, and overall pillar of the Baltimore community to answer this question. Who you got? Okay, unexpected, that's for sure. Look, if we're being honest, the timing wasn't great. The shortstop market was flatter than a not-so-recently opened can of suburban Auburn smash, and a front office that experienced intense turnover meant that a plan was never really put into place about how to address the position internally following the expiration of Bordick's contract. And let's be honest, this team wasn't going anywhere. You could have plugged 1991 Ripken in there, and they're still finishing 20 games outside of first place. Cruz himself put together a fairly unmemorable season for the O's. He did help orchestrate one great moment from that season when on September 8th he was in the middle of a shootout with the Red Sox. His 7th inning bases clearing double led to Red Sox catcher Jason Varitek getting ejected, and his 8th inning fly ball led to Red Sox center fielder Johnny Damon getting publicly embarrassed. After the conclusion of the 2003 season, the Orioles were at a true crossroads. They had spent years as a mediocre team after many in the industry, including first post-Cal shortstop incumbent Mike Bordick, believed them to be a perennial contender. Their shrewdness when it came to spending money under new owner Peter Angelos had finally reached a boiling point with the fan base, and so a promise was made to them. The Orioles, with their first full offseason under Mike Flanagan, would be big spenders. The first splashy move he made? Sign MVP shortstop Miguel Tejada to a team record 6-year, $72 million contract.
In a very poor neighborhood, and he drives it in the corner, and that'll go for extra bases. Tejada into second, and they're just going to keep on waving.
Big movement, but it really makes it tough to get the sweet spot. Swung on, there's a drive, it is deep to left center field, and it's off the wall. Here's a tying run in, Therese around third, Therese scores standing.
Similar to future teammate Melvin Mora, Tejada was born into extreme poverty, saw one of his parents pass on before his 16th birthday, and was heavily overlooked by scouts once he started taking the field. Unlike Mora, who was a multi-sport athlete who was overlooked just because he got a late start in baseball, Tejada wanted to be a ball player from the jump. Rumor had it that he would wear his youth team's jersey everywhere he went because he had no other clothes. The only problem was that he was undersized, even for a shortstop. It was Hall of Famer and fellow Dominican countryman Juan Marichal, at the time serving as an athletic scout, who decided at the risk of his scouting reputation that Tejada was a player worth taking a second look at. What was it specifically about him that caught Marshall's eye? It was the fact that he was willing to do anything. And I know that sounds like a blanket term, but really trust me when I mean anything to get off that island and find a better life for himself. Years later, many of us found out the lengths Tejada was willing to go when revelations emerged that he lied about his age when he first signed with the Athletics. The harsh reality is, amateur international players taking a few years away from their age was not all that uncommon back then. Most teams are going to pass up on an undersized 19-year-old, leaving the player out of time and viable alternate career options. But you tell them that you're 17 years old, and not only is a growth spurt still in play, you've most likely gotten your ticket out of having to spend the rest of your life in the mines working for pennies a day. Sometimes you have to play by the rules given to you, even if it means getting your hands dirty. Tejada lying about his age is a rabbit hole that, when dug through, would uncover the grossly corrupt system that is international free agency, a system that remains corroded to this day. Tejada would do and say anything if it meant advancing his career as a baseball player. Lying about his age was no different. 17, 19 didn't really matter in the end because Tejada tore through the Athletics minor league system. As it became more apparent that he was sticking around stateside, he started learning English by watching Disney cartoons.
Have you been to Bahia, Donald? No? Well, let's go. If you go to Bahia, my friend, you'll never return. E muita sorte teve, muita sorte tem, e muita sorte terá. Have you been to Bahia, Donald? Well, let's go.
It took Miguel a few years to find his footing in the big leagues, but he was still so young that the Athletics were patient with his development. Their patience paid off. From 1999 to 2003, Tejada was only behind arguably the most iconic shortstop triumvirate in terms of F-WAR. He was available despite the fact that he played with a ferocity as if any game could be his last. His hands were freakishly quick to the ball, but his swing was still smooth and direct. It didn't matter that he was 5'9", stocky, and couldn't run all that well, because he would run through a wall for your team. In 2002, he joined Ivan Rodriguez and Terry Pendleton in the Joe Morgan Short King MVP club. And somehow, he wasn't a major part of Moneyball, despite being the most valuable player in the league while on his rookie contract, and previously getting overlooked because of his physical makeup. But I digress. The 2003 offseason marked a signal change for the Peter Angelos Orioles under Mike Flanagan. Their splashy signings of Javi Lopez and Rafael Palmeiro was a refreshing sight to a fan base who was ready to turn the page towards a new heyday. Free agent signings are risky. It's not that the small market Orioles couldn't afford a guy like Miguel Tejada, it's that they couldn't afford for a guy like Miguel Tejada to be bad. We all have to understand, free agent contracts don't undermine a team like the Orioles' success. Bad ones do. If Tejada is given that kind of money and sucks, it hamstrings the team's budget on a net zero player. Mike Flanagan, after his first major signing as GM was announced, said that Tejada would continue the tradition of great Orioles shortstops, one that he had a first-hand view of, dating back to Mark Belanger. As for Tejada, he told the press that Cal Ripken Jr. was his idol growing up. Whether this was a make-good statement from someone who is known to fabricate details about his life from time to time, or a genuine statement remains to be seen. The fact was both parties had a lot riding on this deal. The Orioles were ready to crown him as the definitive Ripken replacement, not just as a shortstop, but as the face of the franchise. Tejada was ready to once and for all prove those scouts that overlooked him wrong, even if it meant crossing a few more lines. The contract immediately turned into an unmitigated success for both sides. In 2004, Tejada posted the highest slugging for an Orioles shortstop since Ripken's 1991 MVP run. That same year, he became only the second shortstop in MLB history and sixth player since 1961 to drive in 150 or more runs, thanks in part to a 558 slugging with runners in scoring position. Of course, you have to be given a lot of opportunities to drive in runs. Tejada had the advantage of hitting in front of speedster Brian Roberts and one-time Orioles shortstop incumbent Melvin Mora, who led the league with a .419 on-base percentage that year. I told you he would come back into play. In fact, Tejada was given the 8th most plate appearances with runners on since 1961 that season. Of course, you gotta perform in those situations, and as we said, Tejada did. He also became the first Orioles player since Ripken to make national headlines when he won the Home Run Derby with a, at the time, record 27 homers. In a replacing series first, I officially give Miguel Tejada the award for Best First Impression. it is hard to endear yourself to a fan base as much as Tejada did to the Orioles faithful in 2004. In case you are curious, the runner-up would be Chris Johnson in 2013. Despite running a solid offensive attack led by top 10 MVP vote getter Tejada, the Orioles finished third in a tough AL East because their starting pitching sucked, and it was only exacerbated by a middling defense. 2005 saw yet another setback for the team, despite the fact that Tejada became just the fourth shortstop since 1961 to pop 50 doubles in a single season on his way to yet another platform year, one where he was given the All-Star Game MVP. Miguel, man, you gotta calm down. These videos only do well if I'm able to shit on the replacements. Hell yeah! That's what I'm fucking talking about, let's go. A few days after recording his 3,000th career hit, Orioles legend Rafael Palmeiro was given a 10-day suspension after testing positive for steroids. A, might I say, laughable punishment given what we are used to seeing nowadays. He stated in front of an arbitration panel that a vitamin he received from Miguel Tejada caused the positive test. Now, I must be clear, from what I read, both the Orioles front office and fan base backed up Tejada. Palmeiro was booed so loudly upon his return that he famously inserted earplugs in order to try and drown them out. Despite this, Tejada seemed to have enough of the team and their inability to put together a 25-man deep roster in the first 2 years of his 6-year contract, especially behind the backdrop of a spectacular collapse during the 2005 season. During the offseason, he publicly requested a trade, something not many MLB players do and especially did back then. However, no trade materialized, and Tejada reported to camp as if nothing occurred, even though a tirade he went on over the situation during the Caribbean series was made public in February. I mean, almost 20 years later, you can still feel the tension in the room throughout this article. But Tejada just continued to perform. The man whose previous career high in batting average was .311 entering the season took yet another franchise record from Cal by posting a .330 batting average in 2006, the highest for an Orioles shortstop during yet another platform season. He led all shortstops in F4 during his first 3 years in Baltimore. I mean, this was, on the field, as good as you could hope for. However, during Game 162, a report is released that implicates Tejada as a PED user. Now, this isn't the Mitchell report, but a predecessor affidavit where former pitcher Jason Grimsley linked numerous teammates to PED usage, including fellow Orioles Jay Gibbons and Brian Roberts. In Tejada's case, the public was acting on a 3 strikes and you're out basis. This was strike 2. Amidst the public scrutiny and fallout, Tejada's performance took a nosedive in 2007. To make matters worse, he suffered a distal radial fracture after taking a Doug Broccoli fastball on his left wrist during a June 20th game. He tried to play through the pain, but it was clear a DL stint was needed. This ended Tejada's streak of 1,152 consecutive games played, the 5th longest in MLB history, and the longest since Cal Ripken's. What at one point looked like a perfect union was crumbling every passing day. Strike 3 occurred on December 13, 2007, when Tejada was one of the 89 MLB players named in the Mitchell report, the bombshell results of a years-long probe into the use of anabolic steroids and HGH in MLB. But the Orioles, maybe somewhat suspiciously, traded Tejada to the Astros the day before the report became public, and therefore were able to get out from under the firestorm that was to come, not just from the Mitchell report, but also from the impending revelations that Tejada lied about his age, and also the spelling of his name too, leading to one of the most infamous TV interviews in sports history.
Is that an actual document? Is this your birth certificate?
Hey, I'm not supposed to be here to talk about this. I'm sorry for you. You don't gotta bring me over here to talk about my personal stuff.
Well, you know, this is kind of important, actually.
Well, I don't know if it is important for right now. I just play baseball, bro. I just play baseball. I don't have to be here to talk about this. I don't need nobody messing up to my head right now.
Does the federal government know?
I don't know, man.
Know your real name and birth date?
I don't know.
When Miguel Tejada agreed to terms during the 2003 winter meetings, it felt like a match made in heaven. The Orioles found their next Ripken, both in terms of position and presence. On paper, it worked out. Tejada would go on to become the game's most productive shortstop during his time in the orange and black. but all was not well behind the scenes. He wanted to play for a winner, and the Orioles wanted an untarnished superstar. The friction caused by those two disagreements dissolved all goodwill between both parties. The team dodged a PR nightmare, but also left their best shortstop since Ripken out to dry, and options for the position were dire. One last note on Tejada before we move on. I found this fact amusing, but couldn't find an appropriate place to insert it. By the time he retired in 2013, Tejada was number 2 for most double plays grounded into for a shortstop. Looking down upon him at number 1 was Cal Ripken Jr. Not many teams are replacing so far had to pull the emergency switch after a perfect marriage because the replacement made the Kevin Costner rumor look like a team promotion. Naturally, and I'm being honest when I'm saying this, there was nobody, and I mean nobody, in the depth chart even worth taking a look at. Can you really blame them though? Do you think the Orioles had a shortstop waiting on the sidelines back in 1991? And no, 20-year-old Manny Alexander doesn't count. When Tejada fractured his wrist in July, Luis Hernandez, a shortstop the team acquired off of waivers after 6 years in the Braves minor league system, became the favored injury replacement. Congratulations, you are now the 2008 Orioles opening day shortstop. Not that it really mattered. After years of slipping because a worsening offense that was once good was unable to support a worsening rotation that was always bad, the Orioles had reached peak levels of mediocrity that were quickly approaching the lows from earlier in the decade. So, as Miguel Tejada's former GM's fictional counterpart is famous for saying, we can recreate him in the aggregate. As it turns out, Brandon Fahey, plus Alex Centrone, plus Juan Castro, plus Freddie Bynum, plus Luis Hernandez, plus, very important here, 2 of Eider Torres' 8 defensive appearances do not equal one Miguel Tejada. Juan Castro, the ringleader of the circus who got the majority of starts to close the season, was a 36-year-old utility infielder acquired from the Rockies minor league system. Naturally, this was the lowest of lows. The tradition of great Orioles shortstops, built from the palms of Mark Belanger's hands and transferred to Cal Ripken Jr.'s, had to been vaporized. 3 years later, Mike Flanagan, local icon, and the same man whose first major move as Orioles GM was signing Tejada, took his own life. A speculated and eventually confirmed reason for his suicide was his own perception that he failed to build a winning Orioles team after his contract expired following the 2008 season. I don't know how I feel about including this detail, but after thinking it over some, I felt it was worth sharing. So that got pretty dark. We need a fresh start. We need to stop overthinking here. Can we just sign a shortstop who you watch play and your only instinct is to let out a firm, not too forced, hell yeah? James Jerry Hardy achieved official Hell Yeah status with the Brewers in 2007. His level of Hell Yeah-ness was so strong that he was named an All-Star reserve. His performance was then taken to a new level in 2008. Then in 2009, it slipped through the drain when he started striking out more than ever and homering less than ever. It got so bad that he was demoted to AAA in August, joining the short list of players who were demoted less than 3 years after making an All-Star team. After a year rebuilding some value with the Twins, Hardy was traded with Brendan Harris to the Orioles for Brett Jacobson and Jim Hoey. I think I said that right. JJ was brought in under the assumption that he'd shore up the infield defense with a glove rated as one of the best while providing an, at worst, huge upgrade offensively, and at best, gargantuan upgrade offensively. I love the guy, but Cesar Turris was not a good hitter. Remember how I said Miguel Tejada won the Replacing Award for Best First Impression? Well, taking Chris Johnson's spot at number 2 is JJ Hardy. Despite breaking his foot during the 8th game of the season, he reached new levels of hell yeah-ness by hitting 30 homers, driving in 80 runs, and running a cool 801 OPS while playing Gold Glove caliber defense at short, despite losing some range from the injury, thanks in no small part to being a double play machine. Shortly after the All-Star break, Hardy accepted a 3-year extension from the Orioles, solidifying himself as their everyday shortstop for years to come. On top of that, the man who filled in for Hardy during his injury gave the Orioles a symbolic victory when he single-handedly took down the Red Sox.
They did it! They did it! The Orioles have beat the Red Sox!
During Hardy's first 4 seasons with the team, the Orioles ranked 4th in shortstop FWAR. The tradition of great Orioles shortstops had been restored. In 2012, it seemed as if the tradition of great Orioles teams had been too. After securing the first ever second AL wildcard, they took on the Texas Rangers, a team looking for redemption after having snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in the prior season's World Series. JJ Hardy continued his reign of hell yeah-ness when he singled home the first run off the 4th pitch of the game and scored the go-ahead run in the top of the 6th. Even better, he did all this with Cal Ripken Jr. calling the game during his stint as a TBS analyst. The victory earned the Orioles a playoff rematch with the Yankees. Of course, the last times these teams met, the Yankees were an upstart dynasty and the Orioles were a dwindling flame. Derek Jeter was building up his legacy, while Cal Ripken Jr. was slowly ramping his down. During Camden's first postseason game in almost 20 years, Derek Jeter, yet again, was a thorn in the Orioles' side. He scored 2 runs in Game 1, the latter of which occurred right before a rare JJ Hardy throwing error, allowing the Yankees to pull out of slam range in the 9th and win Game 1. The next 2 games were a hard-fought battle. JJ Hardy's bat was a non-factor, but it was Game 4, where Hardy truly started to build his legacy, when he silenced Yankee Stadium with 1 swing of the bat.
Here it comes. Fly ball left field. Pretty well hit. Ichiro goes back, and that ball is off the wall. The Orioles will have the lead, and Hardy has a stand-up double and his first RBI of this series.
Unfortunately, they had to go up against CC Sabathia, who silenced their bats over 26 outs in Game 1. The Orioles were bird food, and everyone in Yankee Stadium knew it. They were presented with their best scoring opportunity, with the bases loaded and a gassed Sabathia in the 8th inning. After a Nate McLouth strikeout, the Orioles had 1 out to play with. That out would be in the hands of JJ Hardy, with the chance to play hero for the 2nd straight game.
To short. Jeter will have to hurry.
This was how close JJ Hardy was to solidifying himself as an Orioles icon. I know he wasn't that close to the bag. He was clearly out. It wouldn't have even tied the game, but please just indulge me for a second. I've seen what this team has been through. The immediate fall from grace during the Angelos era, the abrupt rift with Tejada, the seasons of futility both from their shortstops and team as a whole, and the death of Mike Flanagan. The Orioles needed this. JJ Hardy needed this. The city of Baltimore needed this. Of course, Charm City would be given a new lease on life when a few months later the Ravens would win Super Bowl 47. But where did that leave the Orioles? Well, after a season of regression, even after another solid hell yeah from Hardy, the Orioles had enough. Despite a regular season where his power was zapped by a shoulder injury suffered during spring training, Hardy continued to upholster and build upon the legacy of great Orioles shortstops. And after torching the Detroit Tigers over a 3-game sweep in the ALDS, the Orioles rewarded the 32-year-old with another 3-year extension. So after all of that, what happened next? Well, it all fell apart. Against the Royals, Hardy struck out with the bases loaded in Game 1, flew out with the bases loaded in Game 2, and grounded out to end Game 4, completing the sweep. The games were decided by a combined 6 runs. Not to say the losses should all fall on Hardy's shoulders. Baseball is a team sport after all. You need a roster that runs 25 deep to get to a championship. Despite having an elite defense behind them, the Orioles continued to flounder at building a complete rotation. That's just something you can't hide forever, and a team like the 2014 Royals were designed to exploit those defects. And then the following seasons, Hardy's bat disappeared. His left shoulder continued to bite at him, and his power was pretty much gone. To put his fall into perspective, his drop in isolated slugging was the 11th most precipitous from 2013 to 2014. Then in 2015, his drop in OPS was tied for the 5th most from 2014. What I'm trying to say is, what started as bad got worse, and so it sank beneath the lows he stooped to when the Brewers sent him down all the way back in 2009. The 2015 Orioles followed suit, but luckily they were working with a bit more, so they only sank back down to a .500 record. After an offseason of resting and rehabilitating his shoulder, Hardy bounced back to have a nice season in 2016. Not quite a full hell yeah, as it was becoming clear the 33-year-old's offensive prime was well behind him, with his power being zapped. But he shored up his batting line by walking more and striking out less. Adjustments you like to see from a player working around their diminishing physical tools. His defense was great as always, but it was becoming clear that the Orioles would need to soft debut Hardy at the position. Wherever could one find the next great Orioles shortstop? In July of 1982, Orioles manager Earl Weaver made the controversial decision to move rookie sensation Cal Ripken Jr. from third base to shortstop. The Orioles front office questioned whether the 6'4" Ripken would be limber enough to man the position, but he was drafted as one and had the aptitude to adjust on the fly.
There was no meeting that you were going to be a shortstop, or I'm going to make the move, or I'm thinking about making the move. It was just boom, you're going to be a shortstop. And so I took a few ground balls, and then Earl called me in, and I think it was his way of making me relax a little bit. He just said, if a ground ball's hit to you, I want you to catch it, get a good grip on the ball, take your time, and make a good throw to first base. If he's safe, he's only on first base. He's not on second, which his way of saying, don't make any foolish errors, don't try to do more than you're capable of doing, and if you just do what you're capable of doing, then everything will be fine.
Was third base Ripken's stronger position? Yeah. Was shortstop a more awesome position for him to play, and would it change the course of MLB history? Hell yeah it would. Earl made the change, stuck to it, and then Ripken won the MVP a year later on the way to the Orioles' third World Series title. 33 years later, a new homegrown phenom who was drafted as a shortstop and had entered the Orioles' fray as a third baseman had emerged. In 2015, after J.J. Hardy went down with another injury, Orioles manager Buck Showalter, who idolized and formed a bond with Earl Weaver, conjured his spirit when he made the decision to shift Manny Machado, in the middle of his best season, over to shortstop. The next year, Showalter plugged him at shortstop again when Hardy went down. Then in 2017, they brought in Ripken Tejada and Tim Beckham to cover short during Hardy's absence. Okay, we need to take a second to look at Tim Beckham's 2017 Orioles insanity run, because in my mind, it's one of the flukiest ones in recent memory. But in order to determine that, we need to bring in the firepower, we need the subject matter expert, and that's baseball. Take it away.
Tim Beckham was the first overall pick in the 2008 draft. It was the Rays' 4th time picking first overall in a decade, and Beckham was definitely the worst of those 4. Strikeout problems, a drug suspension, and a torn ACL limited him to just 5 MLB games through 2014. He got some decent run with Tampa in the mid-2010s, but mediocre production led to him being traded at the 2017 deadline. Now, he was in the midst of his best season in Tampa, but the Rays saw his results as unsustainable. It took a .350 BABIP for him to hit anywhere near league average with his 32% strikeout rate. So once Beckham got to Baltimore, he decided to show those eggheads in Tampa that they were wrong. And he did it by getting even luckier. In his first 5 games with the O's, Tim Beckham went 13 for 20 with 3 homers and a 2.0 OPS. He finished August with a 1.0, 6 homers, and a .450 BABIP, with an overall production of 1.8 FWAR in the month. The O's rattled off 7 straight wins to bring themselves within a game and a half of a playoff spot by August 30th. Largely thanks to Beckham. Both he and the team came back down to earth in September, with Beckham's BABIP falling to the 220s and his OPS falling to 600, as the Orioles went 7-21 to close out their season. Beckham got hurt early in 2018, and he was non-tendered after an underwhelming season. 1.8 of his career 2.9 FWAR came during that August of 2017. He brought false hope that this team's window was still open, and that he was the long-term solution at short. Tim Beckham, former first overall pick, finally figures it out after a change of scenery and becomes Cal's successor. But it was never real. It was Linsanity.
Thank you, and that's baseball. By the way, please subscribe to his channel. He is almost at 100,000. A victory for him is a victory for us all. Let's get him to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the 2025 regular season. With JJ Hardy officially off the books, Buck Showalter announced that Manny Machado would be the Orioles opening day shortstop in 2018. The cycle had been complete. All the parallels are there. Sure, Machado, who debuted in 2012, was a free agent at the end of the season, and contract negotiations with him stalled. But this could be the first in a long line of successful moves that would turn the Orioles into a contender the same way it happened all the way back in '82. Glory be thy name, great Oriole in the sky. Bless the 2018 season as you have before. So, as it turns out, moving Machado to short was the only good move the Orioles made that season. This video isn't to relitigate the moves that led up to this disaster, but to show what the heck they were doing at shortstop, and amidst this trash blaze, Manny Machado was making franchise history. He had the highest OPS for an Orioles shortstop through the first 96 games of the season, at that point threatening to tie Ripken's 1991 OPS+. Yeah, his defense was giving mixed results, but nothing concrete enough to look at him as anything other than an elite shortstop. With the trade deadline approaching, the Orioles going nowhere fast, and Machado making it clear that he was going to test the open market at season's end, general manager Dan Duquette made the decision to trade Machado to the Dodgers for a handful of prospects right after the All-Star break. Bizarrely, his final appearance in an Orioles uniform actually came during the All-Star game.
Clubhouse. Here's one off the end of the bat, in the air, on the infield, and fighting for it.
In another world, Machado's career is a reflection of Ripken's. Both drafted in the early rounds as prep shortstops. Both were behemoths. Both quickly rose through the Orioles farm system, debuting as Major League third baseman before their 21st birthday, before making the move to short. Machado differed in many ways, sure. He had a temper that would look outlandish on Ripken, plus his move to shortstop came later. But the ingredients were there. Unfortunately, the timing wasn't. This leads us to another procession of Orioles shortstops to fill the void, including post-Linsanity run Tim Beckham, replacing alum Jonathan VR, Rule 5 pick Richie Martin, too late for his prime, too early for OMG Jose Iglesias, UCLA alum Pat Valaika, the Squid Andrew Velasquez, juiced ball merchant Freddie Galvis, fan favorite Ramon Urias, and replacing deep cut Jorge Mateo. The Orioles penciled in as many shortstops from 2018 to 2022, mind you, that comes out to 5 seasons, and one of those was only 60 games, as they did from 1975 to 1995. Going back further, the Orioles penciled in 49 shortstops from 1965 to 2007, which is only 3 more than they did from 2008 to the present. Okay, I'm having too much fun with this. Let's talk about that last guy for a second, Jorge Mateo. Mateo was a former top prospect signed by the Yankees out of the Dominican Republic, and as many of you loyal replacing fans are aware, was at one point seen as a potential long-shot Jeter replacement. Physically, the sport was his oyster, upper grade arm strength, and raw power according to Fangraphs. But it was that speed, that speed, which had scouts fall to their knees. I'm talking game-altering speed. Unfortunately, it just never clicked, and Mateo found himself as waiver wire fodder after a Padres roster crunch in 2021. Once he got on the bases, he was a problem for opposing teams. The issue was, the man couldn't get on base. In 2022, he was top 10 in both chase and swinging strike percentage, not a good recipe for getting on. And as a result, Mateo had the 3rd lowest on-base percentage among qualified hitters that year. The tantalizing part is that he was playing an exceptional shortstop. It's so frustrating when a player is so close to making something great only to see one rotting ingredient that is integral to the success spoil the pot. The Orioles weren't making plans for Jorge, they only wanted what was best for the team. And what was best for the team was...
Gunnar Henderson!
Taken 42nd overall in the 2019 draft, just 6 spots before Ripken was taken in 1978, Gunnar Henderson was the squeaky clean superstar the Orioles have been desperately searching for since Ripken's retirement, and the long-term solution they've been trying to find at short ever since Iron Man moved to third. He is a huge Star Wars and Lego nerd, his favorite band is Motley Crue, which is cool, totally controversy-free if you don't ask what high school he attended, and oh yeah, he could hit. In 2023, a season in which he took home Rookie of the Year honors, Gunnar became just the 5th rookie shortstop to collect over 60 extra base hits, an exclusive club that was founded by Cal Ripken Jr. himself. His 125 OPS Plus beat Nomar Garciaparra as the new high mark for American League rookie shortstops. In 2024, at the age of 23 years old, Gunnar went berserk on West Camden Street. His 9.1 reference WAR was the 5th highest for a shortstop 23 years old or younger, only topped by monuments of the game. We're talking Alex Rodriguez, Arky Vaughan, Rogers Hornsby, and of course, Cal Ripken Jr. It's often difficult replacing a franchise legend because they only come around once every few lifetimes. They do things beyond understanding. Cal Ripken Jr. didn't take a few years to get settled before his name became iconic. He was putting up platform seasons before his brain was fully developed. This is stuff that's hard to believe unless you were actually there. It's the kind of ability that leaves no margin for error if you're trying to replicate. It's like trying to beat a world record. Gunnar presented the rare case of matching Ripken's greatness almost beat for beat. Sure, it took over 20 years since his retirement to arrive here, but good things take time. Oh, by the way, sorry Miguel, but your title for best first impression has been taken. I wanted to see firsthand what the Orioles fans think of their new franchise shortstop. Over the years, I've found it increasingly difficult to do that behind a computer screen, which I know is ironic considering how long I've been doing the series for. I know I can look at the numbers, interviews, post-game clips, even phone a friend like I have, but there's a stark difference between seeing and actually experiencing. So I decided to take a trip to Camden Yards, because I wanted to ask the great people of Baltimore what they think of Cal Ripken Jr. and his rightful successor.
Loyal. The Iron Man for sure.
Iron Man?
Yeah.
The greatest of all time. Oh, you said one word.
Oh, you can say
greatest of all time.
Amazing. Legend. Childhood.
Revolutionary.
Iron Man. He's a legend, right? He's somebody we're probably not going to see or someone like that ever again.
Oh, legendary.
That man.
Iron. Legend.
Dependable. Dependable, yeah.
Consistent.
Amazing.
One word?
Yeah.
Beast.
Fun.
Unbelievable.
MVP? Is that one word?
I'll take it. Oh, he's a dog, man. I love watching him. Not only is he athletic at his position, but his confidence is key, right? Especially at shortstop, right? So you have that on the field leadership, but you see the off the field leadership in the locker room too, which is really great to see, right? Obviously this year not being the year we want to see, but in past years came up 2023, right, and balled out. Right? Last year made the postseason. I look forward to next year too, to see how his leadership continues to grow throughout the team.
Entertaining.
Shortstop Gunnar.
Phenom.
Fiery.
Mark Belanger.
Yeah, I was going to say Mark Belanger was my favorite.
I guess it's Holiday when they move him over there and he plays there sometimes. I would say Holiday.
I don't got one.
Mark Belanger.
Same. Mark Belanger.
J.J. Hardy.
Does Justin Holiday count? I think he's played there once or twice, right?
I'll count Justin Holiday. Thank you, man.
My Orioles history knowledge is being stretched here. I don't think I can name another one because the Orioles are not my main team. so maybe don't use this part. I don't know. Can you name another?
I mean, J.J. Hardy, Caesar Turris, Mike Bordick. I can name a few.
Yeah, J.J. Hardy's a good call.
Yeah. You want to use that one?
Yeah. Do you want me to re-answer it? Yeah. Yeah. Favorite shortstop besides those two, got to be J.J. Hardy, right?
I like Manny, but he's got an attitude though. He's spicy. I like him though. Yeah, we'll go with Machado. Love Richie Martin.
I'd say Miguel Tejada.
I have to agree, Miguel Tejada.
Hell yeah. Thank y'all.
The biggest takeaway from my visit is that Camden truly was the house that Cal built. His presence is felt around almost every corner of the stadium. It's a lot to live up to for a franchise shortstop, but the fan base is overwhelmingly supportive of their guy. Henderson's arrival coincided with what looked like another great run of Orioles teams. Them winning 101 games during his rookie season had all the same makings of when the Orioles won 94 games in Ripken's rookie season before winning it all the next year. Unfortunately, the story goes a bit differently in Gunnar's case. The Orioles were first-round exits in both 23 and 24. Now in 2025, a season in which Henderson didn't make his debut until a week in and didn't really get going until June due to a strained oblique, the Orioles have fallen back into mediocrity, just like they always seem to do, even when Cal was around. It's a story that Orioles fans are all too familiar with. The truth is, the team has done an amazing job supplanting Ripken's production at short. Sure, they haven't reached the all-time highs that Ripken brought them, but the front office intelligently brought in a defensive-first shortstop to provide stability, struck gold with one of the best free agent signings of all time, at least in the first half of the contract, traded for the personification of the phrase hell yeah, and drafted a high school shortstop whose draft position and physical makeup is eerily similar to Ripken's. Oh wait, they did that twice. And now the latter of the two is lighting up the same gauges that Cal did over 40 years ago. What the Orioles were able to accomplish in replacing Ripken isn't easy to do. There is a reason shortstops are valued as much as they are, especially now. Just look at this year's draft for proof. Unfortunately, the Orioles have sparsely been able to build a competent enough roster to support them, which is kind of odd. It's like they defeated the final boss after failing the tutorial. Not that any aspect of team building is easy. And as most of you have surmised by now, either coming into the video or just picked up on while watching it, the biggest bugaboo for them is their inability to either develop or acquire starting pitching. And it's reached a level of absurdity right now. I mean, it's actually like insane how bad they've been. Like historically bad over the last 25 years. And it's crazy because you have guys like Kevin Gossman and Jake Arrieta who became just so much better after leaving the team. You also have the fact that they could have traded for Garrett Crochet. They had the prospect capital to do it, and they just refused. But yeah, if I name this video something like how the Orioles were able to recreate a franchise legend in the aggregate and why it didn't matter, the reason it didn't matter is because they just do not develop or acquire starting pitchers. That's it. There's your answer. You don't need me to go into it for another 5 minutes. The 2025 season, as disappointing as it is, shouldn't discourage Orioles fans. This team has about as good of a foundation as one could wish for. And leading that charge is Gunnar Henderson, the man who, just like his predecessors, has succeeded at replacing Ripken. We have 3 new level 2 ball wizards: Tate Martin, Keanu Jones, and Christopher Sullivan. Thank you all so much for joining the cause. Again, patreon.com/nomorefielders. Support me financially, get some cool perks in return. Thank you all so much.